Welcome, welcome, welcome to yet another episode of Defeating the Darkness, True Crime Stories with Downtown Heather Brown. That's me, former prosecutor in the homicide unit at the Orange County DA's office. Prior to the homicide unit, I was in the sexual assault unit for 10 years, and now I work in private practice, Heather Brown Law. I also work as special counsel for Fight for Survivors, which is a civil litigation firm where we go after the schools, the churches, the organizations, and the institutions that cover up child sexual abuse. And in my practice with Heather Brown Law as a criminal defense attorney, I work right alongside one of my very, very favorite people and a dear, dear friend of mine who we have with us today, Salberg. He goes by Salberg. We'll just call him that. Salberg from Jorgensen Salberg.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's very kind of you to have me. It's a pleasure to be here. You're looking good as always.
Well, thank you. Well, I forced you to be here. So it's not niceness on my part. It's niceness on your part. So I was like, Salberg, I need you.
You need me to fill in because I wasn't the first guest.
Well, you weren't the first, but, sometimes you save the best for last. But you're not just going to be a guest.
Not one and done.
You're not one and done.
Okay.
You are coming back over and over again, unbeknownst to you. I'm just telling you that now. But I need a sidekick. I think I need a sidekick because when I started this podcast, right, I have all these stories that I want to tell, all these true crime stories that I want to tell all of my listeners and my friends and family who are tuning in, hopefully. And I realized I have so many cool guests that come on here, and you're one of them. So we're going to talk and hear a lot of your stories. But I need, space to tell my stories. Absolutely. And my guests are so cool, and they have so many stories like you do.
I'm a good listener.
But you're a great listener. And I need someone to tell my stories too. I don't want to just talk into a camera and tell my stories. So I thought, who could I bring on my podcast that would be super fun, that would be a crowd favorite, that everyone would love and love to know about and learn about and hear from. And so I love talking to you. I love telling stories.
Yes.
And hearing yours. And so here you are. So welcome.
Thank you.
To our new kind of co-host. He won't be here all the time because, I have other guests that I'm going to bring on. But he is definitely going to be a recurring favorite. I know you're going to love him. And so with that being said, Salberg, he goes by Salberg. His name's Jeff Salberg. I'll just spill the beans on him. But I call him Sally. I don't know why, but that stuck. It's an East Coast thing. I always end at E, and Salberg-y didn't fit.
No.
So to me, you're Sally.
Yes.
And let's tell the listeners how we met.
Well, the truth of the matter is we met at a bar. I know for many of you that won't come as a surprise. Heather enjoys her bar time. I was enjoying my bar time. We were introduced by, have you talked about the Kevins yet?
I've teased them about I don't know. I think I've teased them about the Kevin story. That is going to be probably one of the greatest stories that I tell. It's my favorite story to tell is the story about the Kevins.
The Kevins are the ones that introduced us, and God love them for doing that.
Yes, and God love them. That's Kevin Shanae. I'm going to give you a shout out because you are the one that introduced me to Jeff Salberg, Sally, who's here with us today. We were at the Quill, which is a favorite little haunt where a lot of old judges and former prosecutors used to hang out in Santa Ana. It's kind of sketchy area, but it's a cool little bar.
Good food.
The food's delicious.
Food. Amazing food.
The bartenders are lovely.
Yes.
And we were there, and I was there with Kevin, and he said, hey, you got to meet this guy, Salberg, meet Heather. And I was still a prosecutor at the time. And we started chatting, and
telling stories.
And I
having a great time.
I just loved you from the minute I met you.
Yes.
And then I actually asked you, I was thinking about leaving the DA's office and going into private practice. And I knew you were in private practice. And I was going to look at office space down by the water.
Which was very nice.
It was badass, wasn't it?
Yes, very nice.
So I got your number and I said, hey, will you come and help me see if this place is worth the money? Figure it out. So you met me down at the water, and then actually before that, you brought me to your office space.
True.
He brought me to his office space, and it was super badass and cool, and you have your own little fun
area.
area, we'll just call it a man cave fun
Yes.
area, at his office space, which was
The sidebar.
called the Sidebar. And I had dreamed of actually having my own place called the Sidebar. We met that first day we met.
That's right.
I told you that I really just wanted like a little clubhouse to call the Sidebar where I could hang out with all my friends and tell stories. And so you told me at that moment, are you kidding me? I have a place called the Sidebar. And I didn't believe you, but when I saw it in person, I was like, So we went to the place on the water.
Which was amazing.
It was amazing.
It was
And
very
you were
fun.
like, Brown, I don't know. I'd let you move into my office, but this is pretty badass.
It was pretty incredible.
Yeah. It was, so I had to make a decision. Do I go hang out with this cool guy who's got the Sidebar and have someone to bounce things off of? Or do I go alone down by the water and have a badass bitchin' view? And I chose you.
I am very, very lucky. Very fortunate.
I am the lucky one.
No.
So Salberg and I, we have tried a couple cases together. We work
Yes.
on cases together.
We do.
And
In fact, I was supposed to start a trial today
with me.
with you.
And I said, get your ass here after court because you know that case isn't going to go. And get down here and come on the podcast. And so you, in fact, came here right from court. Okay.
I did.
Tell them about this stupid case that you and I are going to work on.
It's the most absurd case that I've ever had. And the client is a Teamster. I do a lot of work with Teamsters, and he is a strike coordinator, meaning that he puts together and organizes the strikes when they occur. They were striking at a dental office in Bellflower in
That's LA County, right?
LA County. This client's were at the Bellflower courthouse. This client is an older gentleman, sustained some type of injury that caused him to walk with a limp, and he has a cane most of the time. So during this organization of this strike, and it had gone on for several months, deputy sheriffs had been called out several times, not by the striking union members, but of course by the other individuals who were walking in and working in the building and trying to break, in essence, the line. And so the deputies were incredibly frustrated and had told my client several times that we're going to get you when we have the opportunity. So one day, there were about 5 pickers there. It wasn't a huge day. And he was crossing on the sidewalk, crossing the driveway to the parking lot, when 2 young girls sped by, and I don't want to say they intentionally tried to hit him, but they certainly were traveling, according to the witnesses, at a high rate of speed for a parking lot as he was in front of them. He made it across the driveway. They stopped in the middle of the street and said, in essence, F you to him, rolled down the windows. And he was at the time eating a cutie, a little tangerine
Those
orange
little
thing.
tiny, the
Little
smallest
tiny things
oranges on the planet.
on the planet. And it was half eaten. And when they
So
stopped,
half of a cutie.
half a cutie. And he attempted to throw it to the street in an attempt to throw it at these girls, allegedly. But let's just say he's not the most athletic individual I've ever seen. So the cutie did not make it to the car. It didn't make it anywhere near the car. Ultimately, he was arrested for vandalism, for assault, for various things. And that's where we are. We were supposed to try this case today, start trial, but it got pushed. There's apparently some additional video evidence that the DA just told me about, so that he's going to send me. I can't imagine how much more there can be. Seems quite silly.
So he threw half-eaten cutie, didn't hit anyone, didn't hit the car, and is being charged with assault and vandalism and
Those two,
assault and
those are
vandalism.
two.
That's ridiculous.
It's absurd.
That's the most outrageous thing I think I've heard in a long time.
So the alleged victim in this case produced an estimate to the tune of $1,000 for damage to her Honda Accord, but with no supporting pictures, just an estimate.
Yeah.
And I've been asking the DA for, are there any pictures to support damage? Because I struggle to believe that a half-eaten cutie could cause $1,000 in damage to any vehicle, let alone a Honda Accord. And they have yet to provide me with any. I mean, the estimate's one thing, but you got to show pictures. You got to give me some pictures of some damage. Otherwise, anyone can write an estimate.
That's absolutely ridiculous, especially in light of the fact that people are this is LA County.
LA County.
They're doing smash and grabs and robbing people and committing horrible crimes and getting away with it. And they're going to use taxpayer dollars to prosecute someone for vandalism and assault for throwing a half-eaten cutie in the street, basically, that didn't hit anyone.
How much does it cost roughly on average to try a case every day?
It costs roughly, and you guys are going to be shocked. I had a judge tell me this once. I didn't research it, so I'm just telling you what this judge told me. One of the reasons the judges try to clear the system and give really low deals to defendants to plead guilty is that it costs $10,000 a day to run a jury trial between the court staff, the court, all the judge, getting the jurors, the people in the jury assembly room, all the workers, everything that it takes, the bailiffs, everything to put on a jury trial costs the court system $10,000 a day. LA County is going to spend $10,000 a day to prosecute a guy for throwing a half-eaten cutie, yet they're going to let people who are robbing people, who are smashing storefronts and running in and looting the places and terrorizing people go free. Yet this is what they're going to spend their hard-earned resources on. Not to mention it costs our client money to hire us to represent them. It's absolutely ridiculous what's going on right now.
Absolutely incredible.
Right? Yep. It's a crying shame.
It is.
So needless to say, we will be bringing in a bag of cuties to that jury trial and open up a can of whoop ass. I'm hopeful that the jurors are like, this is the most ridiculous thing we've ever heard of.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know how they couldn't, but we'll see.
We'll see we'll keep you posted on the cutie trial.
We'll keep you posted.
It'll be breaking news on my podcast.
So silly.
I used to prosecute murderers and
Right.
go on, work on death penalty cases. Now I'm defending people for throwing cuties. Wow.
Oh, how it's changed.
Oh, how times have
How far we've
changed.
come.
How far I've come and how far I've fallen. But it's all right. This will be a fun one. At least I won't worry at
we'll
night.
have a great time.
Yeah.
We'll have a great time.
We'll have a
with
great
this
time.
Silly case.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. Are you going to wear those crazy socks to court?
Well, I do have a thing
see
about
these
socks, as you know. Yes, I try to, wear some crazy stuff. Wear some crazy socks. I like to,
Mix it up a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah, because you look so, imposing,
Well, I don't know about that.
ominous.
I will tell you, as a confession, I guess, or an admission, the first time I met Brown that day at the bar, she told me I looked familiar, and I said, "How so?" I don't know how. She's like, "Well, actually, I'm trying to think. You look like the love child of Shrek and Uncle Fester." I was like, "Wow."
I did not say that.
We just met. That's a tough crowd.
I did not say that. You're so full of shit, Sally. I love you. I didn't say that. I would never be so cold and callous. Uncle Fester's not so bad.
No, he's not. He's handsome.
But so these socks, do you always wear wacky socks?
I do. I always wear funky socks. That's just my thing.
That's your thing?
I actually it only happened once, but I did get a great offer from a judge. I was back in chambers, crossed my legs, and like this.
Flash the socks?
Yeah. And she was like, "Oh, those are interesting socks." And I said, "Well, I'm an interesting lawyer." And we had a little conversation. She's like, "All right, I'm going to give you that deal. I'm going to give you that deal." So, yeah, one time they worked out for me. They worked to my benefit.
You've been wearing them ever since?
Yeah,
All right, I'm going to hook you up with some nice socks.
That would be amazing.
Okay. So you're a criminal defense attorney.
I am.
And you also do civil law. Tell us about your law practice.
So I do criminal defense. I don't represent bad people. I represent good people that just fumble. And so my reputation, I think, with the Ds is that if they see me, they know it's a good person. It's not some rapist, not some robber, not some gangster, no one like that. So I do enjoy that. But I also enjoy the other side, the injury cases and things like that. The truth is I actually really enjoy being in criminal because I get to go in and talk with people, and the civil stuff. I have a partner that's absolutely the smartest dude I've ever met and is amazing at handling all of that because I get bogged down in the paperwork. I like a criminal case that you can just go try it based on the police report, and there's not volumes and volumes of of exhibits and records that we have to get through. So I do enjoy the plaintiff stuff, but the criminal is a lot better for me, a lot more fun. I can go in and just kind of BS and meet people and get good results.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's much less paperwork to criminal law, and the civil lawyers, they should be called uncivil lawyers sometimes. They're not so civil.
That's so
They
true.
fight like dogs, and they're like mean to one another.
Over
They're
the
so
dumbest
nice.
shit. Yeah.
In criminal land,
It's
believe it
true.
or not, you'd think it'd be more like,
No.
uh,
If you're not an asshole, everyone's going to love you and enjoy, and we can all get along and work it out. And if we disagree to disagree and we try the case, then cool.
yeah.
That's the way it goes. But yeah, most of the time in the criminal world, the DAs and the lawyers, the defense lawyers get along pretty well. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree 100%. Yeah. It's changing a little bit. I think it's a little more, what's the word?
Antagonistic.
Yeah. Cantankerous or confrontational between the public defenders and the DAs, which is a crying shame because back in my day, in the old ages when I was there, we got along really well. I loved the public defenders. A lot of them are on the bench now. They're actually judges now, and it's a good thing we got along when we did, right? Because now I'm appearing in front of them and asking them for deals. So yeah, it's good stuff. But there were some great public defenders and in DAs too, and so times are changing. It's crazy out there. Okay, so but let's talk before you were a badass lawyer here in Orange County.
Yes.
You were actually a deputy sheriff.
I was for LA County. So for about 8 years, which was a great gig. It was my second job out of college. My first job was working as a claims adjuster for 20th Century Insurance Company. So that was my background. I did that for 3 years. The guys I ran around with in high school were rough dogs, and they either went into law enforcement or into custody. So those that went into law enforcement were making 3 times the money I was and buying new boats and new trucks to haul the boats. And I was like, what am I doing? This seems amazing. So I had family members that were deputies for LA County. And so that's the path I went. And it worked out very well for me. I enjoyed it. I got in a fight one day with a bad guy and tore apart both my ankles. So after multiple surgeries, that was it. I retired. I had gone to law school while I was sitting in custody, not because I wanted to be a lawyer.
Wait, back up. I got to stop you for a minute. When you just said sitting in custody, you don't mean in custody prison.
No. I mean at Men's Central Jail. Okay. So the first job of any deputy sheriff in any county is to work custody. So it was designed to be about a long time ago, a year and a half, and it goes up and down the time in, depending upon the need for patrol deputies and things like that. But the idea was to get you acclimated, if you weren't already acclimated, with bad guys and try and figure out how they think, what they say, how they talk, who they associate with. So almost like a grooming, figuring out process for deputies, kids that were, graduating the academy but had never really been in trouble, didn't have any associations with bad guys. And it's a really good idea. I know a lot of patrol officers think, I don't want to, that's why a lot of people don't become deputy sheriffs, because they don't want to go to custody for a little bit. They want to go straight to patrol and straight to the streets. But if you don't have a background dealing with knuckleheads, then it is kind of a good plan to get you acclimated.
I never even thought of it that way. I, like you just explained, I always thought that, like, I know here in Orange County, the sheriffs, I think they make them do like 5 years of working in custody. So they're either working in Orange County Jail, the deputy sheriffs, or some of them work as bailiffs in the courthouse.
True.
So, but before they can go out and patrol, because I teach a class at Cal State Fullerton, which you've come to guest lecture.
It's amazing. Yes.
I'm going to bring you again.
Amazing.
And so a lot of my students, they're criminal justice majors, and they ask me, like, hey, they want to be police officers. Right. That's the whole reason they're getting a criminal justice degree. And every one of them tells me, I want to be a homicide detective. I want to be a sex crimes detective. And they have this lofty goal of being a detective. And I try to let them know, you do understand that you have to do patrol first and have some probably crappy assignments before you can actually work your way up to a detective spot. And I always try to tell them, if that's your goal, then start at a small agency, because you'll have a quicker opportunity of getting where you want to go if you're big fish in a small pond.
For sure.
But small fish in a big pond would be sheriffs. But now that you're explaining it to me, that does make a lot of sense, that you could get a ton of experience in learning. And most people who become cops, I don't think now they've lowered the bar a little bit, but back in the day, you couldn't have been a shitbird. You couldn't have been a bad kid if you wanted to get into the sheriffs, right? Correct. You couldn't have done drugs or run around with a bunch of hooligans. And so it makes sense that those kind of people that would be accepted into the sheriffs wouldn't have an opportunity to become cops, because the people that understand the criminal underworld wouldn't have an opportunity to become cops.
Correct. And it takes one to catch one. You got to think like a bad guy in order to anticipate what they're doing. So it really is a good program, I think, personally. But yeah, it does make sense. So I never planned on being a lawyer. I had visions of being the sheriff one day.
The sheriff.
The sheriff.
That was your dream.
It was definitely a goal. And I thought that a law degree would help me, just promote through. But everything happens for a reason. So
when you were going to law school, you were still a deputy sheriff?
Yes.
So you're working full time. Did you have a family at the time?
I did. I had my oldest daughter, Riley. So I lived in Montclair at the time. So I had bought a little condo. And so that's San Bernardino County. I would drive to Men's Central Jail downtown, work 6 to 2, finish my shift.
PM to 2 a.m. or?
AM, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Drive down to Chapman Law School in Orange County, get down there by 3, study from 3 to 6, class from 6 to 10, Monday through Thursday. Drive home, try and brief my notes for an hour, sleep for 4 hours, 4.5 hours, get up and do it all over again. So for 4 years, I didn't see my wife or oldest kid Monday through Thursday.
Wow.
So summers I saw, but yeah, most of the time, because I would be up and gone by the time they got up, and I'd be home long after they were asleep. So that was a challenging
That's rough.
Few years. Yeah. But
you're making up for it now, though, with your daughter. You see her all the time, huh?
I do. She's amazing. My middle one is actually coming home this weekend. I'm picking her up Friday. We're going to In-N-Out. That's what she wants.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you have a younger son, too.
I do.
So you have 3 kids.
Yes, 3 kids.
So your wife didn't leave you after the 4 years of law school?
No.
She waited 16 years?
She 27.
Oh, 27 years you were married?
27. Well, 24 together, 27. Yes, long time. Amazing woman.
And the mother of your 3 children.
She is absolutely amazing.
But you're single now.
I am. Yes.
Did you hear that? Sally's on the market. Jeff Salberg, single.
Yes.
I got to give you a plug.
No, I appreciate that. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes, my life is good. I get to hang out with you. I get to try cases, and
you have these 3 beautiful children. I've met all of them. They're amazing.
3 amazing kids. Yes. My oldest and I, so my middle one's still in Nashville. She went to school out there, stayed. She's now in her 2nd year teaching 9th grade English. My son is in his junior year at Montana State in Bozeman, which I love going to see him, because have you been to Bozeman?
I've never been. I want to go. And my old investigator lives in Montana, and I want to go visit him. JB, if you're listening, you have got to come out and be on my podcast. Everyone wants to hear your crazy stories. Man,
he's got the best crazy stories.
Doesn't he have the best? He's the best.
He's amazing.
He's amazing.
That guy. Yes. So, but my oldest lives by me in Costa Mesa, and so we hang out a lot. Yes, it's great. I'm very lucky. Very lucky dad.
Yeah, you are.
Very lucky.
Okay, so you went to law school, and you're working at the jail.
At the jail.
And then you had these visions of being the deputy sheriff.
The sheriff.
Not deputy sheriff, the sheriff of LA County.
LA County.
Yeah, we wish you were.
Yeah.
Wish that didn't work out the way it
it's been
did.
crazy. But everything happens for a reason, right? I do believe that. I know you believe that.
100%. Oh, 100%. So then what happened?
So then
you kind of glossed over this. I want to back up to that.
Okay, so I got injured, multiple surgeries. Then
wait, back up. You can't just say I got injured.
Well,
what happened? Something happened. You got in a tussle?
I did. I got in a fight, but you get in a lot of fights. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about that. So, as a deputy sheriff, you get in a lot of fights with the inmates?
Sure. Yes. Well, you used to. I don't know now.
The culture's changed a little because they're body worn cameraing everybody.
Yes. So, but yes, you certainly used to. And
what kind of inmates? What jail was that at?
At Men's Central Jail in LA downtown.
And is that as rough as they say it is?
Yes. It's arguably there'll be bad guys in there that have been in state prisons all over the country, the gnarliest state prisons, and they'll all tell you Men's Central Jail is the worst place ever because they don't have a program there. The deputies run the program. And you're going to walk with your hands in your pocket and your right shoulder on the wall. You're going to do everything that you're supposed to do to keep order. Otherwise, that place would fall apart because there'd literally be 2 deputies in the middle of a hallway and 200 inmates, 100 on each side, and they would rip you apart in a second if they didn't know that there would be consequences if you got out of line. And not in a mean, terrible way, just there was order. It ran smoothly because there was order. But occasionally someone has a rough day and, some of the inmates have rough days and they do things or say things that they shouldn't do. So, yeah, it was, but yes, there were a lot of fights that happened.
Wow.
And I don't think as much anymore. I think it's a whole different environment. It's a whole thing now.
And when you're a sheriff in the jail, you don't have a gun on you, right?
No, absolutely not.
Because the reason for that is
they take your gun. If you had
all hell breaks loose.
Right. If 2 deputies with 200 inmates on the wall, and they snatch your gun and they kill everyone, or a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So no guns, pepper spray. You were permitted to carry a flashlight. I did not do that. But pepper spray, but that's it. That's kind of what you're working with. And then we have tactical teams that, in custody that if someone's being a knucklehead or a bunch of knuckleheads, and we can go in and take care of things. But
So you got in a fight with a guy, and was there stairs involved?
Yeah. So went down a flight of stairs and tore apart both my ankles. Oh. And so.
So the sheriff's department medically retired you?
They did. So, yes. I fought it for a while, tried to stay in the game because I really felt like that was my path. But after 3 surgeries, that was it.
Wow.
So
then you thought, oh, shit, now I got to be a lawyer?
I got to be a lawyer.
All right. Well, I'm glad that happened because we would have never met.
We wouldn't be sitting here right now.
We wouldn't be sitting here. You'd be in the sheriff. You'd be fighting Gascon right now on all his nonsense that's happening.
Craziness.
Yeah.
I can't believe still that cutie case. And that guy is, letting real bad guys go.
Oh, yeah. Did you? I don't know too much about this case, but I heard about this case where some guy decapitated his own children, and Gascon was like, we're absolutely not seeking the death penalty. If anybody needs to be put down and put to death, it's the guy who decapitates children. End of story.
Absolutely.
It's a wrap. Come on.
Yeah, that's
probably the worst thing I could imagine you ever doing to somebody, a child. I think it was his own children. I don't remember exactly the story, but I heard it and I was disgusted at what's happening in LA County. Yeah. I feel like ignorance is bliss. Sometimes I try to block out, all the dark stuff. Because, that's one thing I have to confess. I'm you probably know this from being friends with me for such a long time now, but I'm kind of ignorant about the news, about what's happening, other cases in the news. Because I have my own cases, right, and I put everything I have into my own cases, and especially when I was a prosecutor. Now I pay a little more attention to other stuff. Right. But when I was a, DA, I got my own horror story that I'm looking at and dealing with and talking about and thinking about. And when I get home, I don't want to read about all the other horrible, tragic things in the news, you know? I didn't want to learn about anymore. It's a lot to take. And especially even when you talk about and think about things like about the evil in the world and the bad guys that you talk about. Like, I like the cutie trial because it's not that, you know.
It's light and fun.
It's light and fun and stupid.
And absurd.
Right.
So
It's like so absurd and ridiculous that we could laugh about it.
Absolutely.
I mean, not that it's not serious for, you know, our client who's like, are you kidding me? You know, nobody wants to be charged with an assault. But in the grand scheme of things, this is such a nothing burger versus like horrible cases that I talk about a lot. But yeah. My hat's off to LA Sheriff, because after you get out of custody, you still go and do patrol, and you can then work and become a detective, right?
You can promote all the way up through. Yeah, that's the beauty of such a big agency is you can literally choose your path, whatever. You know, some guys want to be SEB, which is our SWAT team, Special Enforcement Bureau. Some guys want to go to dope. Some guys want to go to homicide. And you kind of pick that path, and then you follow through with heading in that direction. But it's so, you know, some guys want to go to Aero Bureau. Some guys, you know, there's so
what
many.
Bureau?
Aero.
What the hell's that?
The helicopter? Air One?
Oh, Aero
Bureau.
Okay. Like
what'd I say?
Bow and arrow?
No, not bow and arrow. AE.
Arrow.
Arrow. Do I know am I spelling that properly?
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'm just being a dummy. Okay.
You're hilarious.
It happens.
But there's a lot of paths that you can take. So it's good having that big agency, you know, LA County, LAPD, you know, some of the smaller guys, smaller agencies, they do, you know, Irvine, for example. I know a lot of those guys, and they have some movement, but you know, if you spend a few years as a detective, then you go back into a radio car, and then you go back to a detective. Like, there's only so many things that you can do at a smaller agency. At a big department, you can do
anything. Yeah, they have like some agencies have like SWAT teams themselves.
For sure.
Some have bomb sniffing dogs.
Yes.
Some have the
Canine,
helicopters. Absolutely. Beach, you know, in Huntington Beach has all kinds of good toys, right? Like where you can ride the
four-wheelers.
Yeah, yes. 4-wheelers on the beach. And
until you hear those stories of those guys running over some poor beachgoer and killing them, which happens.
Oh, really?
More often than you think.
Oh shit! I didn't hear about that.
Just not paying attention, or the person's kind of camouflage or whatever, and yeah.
Oh, and they've run over them.
It's not good.
That's not good.
No, not good.
That's a bad day.
Yeah, that's a bad day.
Trying to enjoy a little sun. Honey, how was your day at work? Not so good. Didn't work out the way I expected. Might have run over someone.
Okay, but I want to go back to something for you, because ever since we met and we've talked, you have done such an amazing job of, and I don't know if it's compartmentalizing. I don't know. Compartmentalizing, or just dealing with the stresses that you did. And I know you have an amazing support with your family and friends, but the shit you dealt with was freaking gnarly, like really, really gnarly. Mm-hmm. And for you not to be all fucked up and damaged is amazing to me. That I feel like you have really done a good job of managing that, whatever it is, that stress, that anxiety, that.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. And I'd like to think that I have. There was a time that I was drinking too much tequila. There was, when I was in the sexual assault unit. I have to tell you, that was hard. It was, because, you know, I did it for so long. I was there for over 10 years in that unit, and I had a specialized caseload where it was a federally funded grant caseload, and all of my victims were 10 and under. Ugh. So every day, all day, to think about, talk about, read about little kids getting raped and sodomized, it was dark. It was heavy. And when I came home to my family, I just wanted to, you can't stop thinking about the evil. Yeah. You can't stop thinking about all the depravity of humanity. And I know anybody who's out there, you know, now still, I know there's some really outstanding prosecutors in the sexual assault unit at the DA's office, you know, good friends of mine that they're probably just dipping their toes in the water. But when you've been there for that many years, and
I've
that's
seen it so much,
and you hear so many horror stories, and then when you're like out with your friends and like, oh, what are you working on? And you start to tell them, they're like, okay, stop talking.
Right.
You know, like it's hard.
Right.
So, yeah, but I do, God has helped me a ton.
Your faith, yes.
My faith. And, you know, you'll notice I always wear crosses and cross jewelry and stuff because I feel like I need some protection from the darkness. Like that's the whole point of this podcast really, is to talk about defeating the darkness. It takes strong people, and whether they're detectives, whether they're, you know, victims, whether they're victim advocates, rape trauma counselors, lawyers, judges, like to stand up against the evil that exists in this world. It is a dark place that we live in, and we have to find the light. And I wear the crosses out of protection too. Just talking about it, you don't want to open yourself up to the evil forces that lurk out there. And so I do, you know, my faith has gotten me through and strengthened me because I know, you know, there's always light, even in the darkest. And like, the light shines brightest in the darkest places. And so I'd like to believe that, you know, I am strengthened, not just, well, by God, certainly by Jesus, but what has happened to me in my childhood. You know, I've gone through a lot, and, you know, one of these days I'll, you know, drink enough tequila to tell you all, you know, about the darkness that's happened in my life that really just became kind of the basis for who I am and how I'm able to deal with it. And my whole life I've been compartmentalizing. I think that's a good way psychologically to protect yourself from the evil. And the other thing that I have is like, have fun, right? That's one of the ways that I defeat the darkness is I hang out with my friends, and I surround myself with really good people who we can laugh. And I have, you know, what do they call it? Gallows humor. I have a dark, dark sense of humor, which anyone who knows me knows that.
Yes.
And I like to make people laugh in the midst of the darkest, darkest places, because laughter is one of the ways that you can defeat the darkness, right? If you're laughing about it and you're not taking it too seriously and you're fighting the good fight and doing everything you can to overcome the dark forces, then, you know,
that's all we can do.
Yeah, that's all you can do.
That's it.
And so, yeah. When you were talking about the LA Sheriff's Department, it reminded me of a case that I worked on. I'll tell you a little dark story.
Please.
This is really dark.
Go.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Do you need a sip of your
I love dark.
That's why I make my guests have a little cocktail, because it loosens them up and lets them hear these terrible stories. No. So, okay, so this case, the guy's name is Terry Shields.
Okay.
Probably one of the most despicable human beings I have ever prosecuted. And this was a case that was worked on by LA sheriffs.
Okay, I was going to say, you were a prosecutor in Orange County.
I was. Good catch. Good catch. That's why my lawyer's the sidekick. So the reason I was prosecuting is because the crimes actually occurred in Orange County, but the guy got busted in LA County. It was a task force. Okay. There was a guy named Bernie Trapp, Detective Bernie Trapp. Maybe I'll have him up. Bernie, I'm calling you out. I want you on my podcast. We in the midst, this is what I'm talking about having fun, okay? This was probably one of the darkest cases that I prosecuted, but I had fun in the midst of the trial. And I was like 8 months pregnant when I tried this case. And Detective Bernie Trapp was on it, and there was a Detective Brian Circle. He was great. He was a brand new detective in LA Sheriff's Department. He had just, you know, he was a police officer for a long time, but made the detective bureau, and he was a detective in sex crimes now. And they had just recently passed a law about child pornography, made it a felony. It used to be you could have thousands of images of child pornography, okay, like photos of kids, you know, in horrible sexual positions and doing horrible things with horrible people. And it was a misdemeanor, and you could only charge them on the state level with one count. Okay, they changed the law. They now made it a felony, but on the state level, it's still only one count, whether you have 8 images or 5,000 images, which is ridiculous.
That's absurd.
I know, it's absurd, right? So there was this big, heavy-set guy, right? And when I say heavy-set, like, no offense to any of us chubby bears out there, but This guy was like 550 pounds big.
Is she talking to me?
I'm not. I'm not talking to you. You're perfect.
Yeah, right.
You're like a big teddy bear.
Right.
But anyway, okay, so no, but this guy Terry Shields was like over 500 pounds. He was huge, okay, and he was seen by these like, I don't know, like pot smoker guys at a internet cafe, like back before everyone had the internet. People who didn't have internet would have to go to these internet cafes to, you know, look at child porn or use the computers. You pay by the hour, you know, whatever. And so there were these two guys, like I always think of them as like Beavis and Butthead working. They're like, hey, dude, they're like, that big fat guy over there is looking at kiddie porn. And because they could see the images that come up on the computer.
Right.
And there was a cop eating donuts across the street.
That's weird.
Just kidding. There was a police officer sitting that they could see his police patrol car. So they went across the street and said, hey, there's that big fat guy in there is looking at kiddie porn. So they send in, the cops go in, and there's Terry Shields, and he had these like little discs. They were like purple and blue and yellow. You know, those old school floppy, floppy discs. That's how old school this guy was. And he had these discs, and he was, he had probably 20 of them right sitting next to his computer. And the cops are like, oh, what are you looking at? And Terry Shields was like, oh, I was researching nature photos, and these images of child pornography popped up, and I was downloading them to turn them over to law enforcement. Bullshit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure you
right?
were, Terry.
Needless to say, the cops didn't buy that because that was bullshit. So they arrested him for possession of child pornography. And because they had just made it a felony, they were able to, you know, bail was higher, so he was in custody.
So this was an internet cafe in Orange County.
LA County.
Okay.
So they arrest him, LA County, at the internet cafe. And he's in custody. And this detective, who was brand new to the unit, Brian Circle, he says, oh, you know what? Where there's some, there's more. The guy told Detective Circle, the defendant, that he lived out of his car. Well, his car was still parked at the internet cafe. So he got a warrant to search the car to think maybe there's more child pornography. So he goes, he searches the car, and what he found in the car was so disturbing. It will just, this story is going to freak some of you listeners out. So if you're squeamish about like horrible things. So in the car, they found, in the trunk, there were binoculars, there was a stun gun, a taser, a wig, Tickle Me Elmo dolls, 2 of them, a Costco-sized box of lollipops, some astringent, like this spray, which is a topical anesthetic for injecting children. And then they found a Grim Reaper mask, little signs, you're cute, I like you. And then there was a backpack, a blue backpack that had a notebook in it, but it also had like, I'd say somewhere around 30 vibrators, dildos, double-headed dildos, all kinds of weird sex things, right. Condoms, lubricant. There was all this weird stuff, wigs. I don't know if I said wigs already, and like just weird, creepy ass stuff. And the cops are like, what? But they found a return of service on a search warrant, which is when the police officers serve a search warrant, they have to leave a note saying we searched this and this is what we located and your property's here or whatever. So they found this return of service on a search warrant and for a storage unit. So the cops, the detective from LA Sheriff, calls the police officers who served this warrant. And they said, hey, there's a warrant for some storage unit. So, you know, what'd you find? They said, oh, well, our dog sniffed out what they thought was narcotics at the storage unit. So we got a warrant. We searched it. We didn't find any narcotics, but there was all kinds of weird kiddie porn and stuff there. So then the cops get what's called a piggyback warrant, and they search this storage unit. And in the storage unit, I'm talking like a mountain of magazines, of like cheerleader magazines, like kiddie porn stuff. Just dirty magazines with younger people. And then there were like soiled little kids' underpants and little bracelets and jewelry of children. and there were backpacks and school IDs and all kinds of weird stuff. Nothing arguably criminal
Right.
at that time, but they were like, what? Well, but while they were at that storage unit, they got a phone call from a lady who says, hey, my renter just called me and asked me to bail him out of jail. And I'm wondering what he got arrested for. And they're like, who's your renter? And she's like, Terry Shields. And they're like, he lives with you? And they're like, yeah, he rents a room. He's super creepy. And he has a padlock on his door. And he never comes out of his room. And I think he's weird, but he called me. So I wanted to find out what he's in for first. And so they were like, the cops are like, Terry Shields live with you? Yeah. So they get a warrant for his room. And in his room, they find, okay, check this out, Sally. I don't know if you know this, but they found like 6 jugs of urine. Right? Ew. Like, and weirdly enough, it wasn't weird to me or anyone who works in the sexual assault unit, because I would tell you that I'd say 70 to 75% of the cases involving child pornography, we find jugs of urine in their room. Do you know why?
I don't.
They're so obsessed. And this was before cell phones, obviously. It was like internet. You had to use a hard top. Now I'm sure they just bring their cell phones with them. But before it was as easily accessible and you didn't have cell phones, people who were viewing child pornography, they're so obsessed with looking at the kiddie porn. They can't even get up to go to the bathroom. So they just pee in jugs. So if you ever see anybody with jugs of urine in their house, run for your life. They're perverts. Okay? Like, you are so obsessed you can't even leave. So he had, and I've seen it multiple times on cases. It's wild. So
70%, roughly.
Roughly 70% of the people that the police bust for possession of child pornography have jugs of urine in their. Wow. It's crazy, huh? So anyway, so not only do they find jugs of urine, but they find this trunk, right? It was this big trunk that when they opened the trunk, there was videotape after videotape and CD after CD of kids in the most compromising positions being, sexually assaulted on these videos. So, like, this is obviously a huge, huge case for this new detective. And he was at the time working on a task force, like a federal task force. So the FBI was on the task force too. So they get the FBI involved, and they did an incredible job. But the thing was, they needed to figure out, who are these children? Are there any live victims? Because right now, all we have him is possession of child porn.
So were the tapes homemade, or were they purchased? Homemade
tapes.
By him?
Well, that's the question.
Okay.
That's the question, right? You don't know.
No.
So what they did was they had all these FBI agents. And listen, talk about needing to have a drink. If anybody's ever been in a position where they work and they have to watch something like this, it's traumatizing.
Oh, yeah.
It is. You can talk about it and imagine, but to see something like what was contained on these videos and these discs, you need like a Xanax afterwards to, it's diabolical. It's pure and simple evil at its,
Yes.
You can watch a movie and see all this, like Kill Bill, and they're slaughtering everyone, but you know that that's television. When you know that this is real and these are real children, like that's when your soul is stolen from you. When you have that moment, when you realize that there are people capable of such horrible things, it does. It makes you want to sleep with one eye open. But it's awful. It's awful. Never mind going through it, but when you have to sit there and watch it over and over and over again and try to slow it down and back it up and watch it to see if you can write down some details and document something so you could actually locate. So God bless these FBI agents that sat there in those rooms. So they were going through all of these CDs, and I don't just mean like 5 or 6. I'm talking hundreds of CDs and videotapes. And there was this one videotape that they dubbed the sisters, because these 2 girls appeared to be sisters. Somebody's going to get busted right now.
Oh, yeah.
Go get them. Go get them.
Police.
The police is going by. That's what happens when you film outside, right? If you hear the bug zapper, that's my own personal electrocution chair. I love to kill the mosquitoes.
Do you think it's a motorcycle deputy trying to write you a ticket?
Yeah. At one point, Salberg was actually representing me, my son, and my husband for traffic tickets. We're such a bunch of derelicts. He's like, what's going on, Brown? I got every one of your family members on my docket.
That's true.
It's a true story. And one of them, my son, I'm calling you out, Nick Brown, was going like 95 out in the middle of nowhere on his way to Havasu.
100 plus.
Yeah. And Salberg had to
go to Needles.
He had to go to Needles. I love you. That was really cool of you to do that.
Of course.
Anyway.
Okay, back
to it. So we needed a moment of levity in the midst of this darkness. Yeah. So anyway, so the detectives and the FBI, they're going through these videos and they're finding, just little details. And they dubbed these two the sisters. And we're hoping that they could maybe find two sisters that were reported as being victims or whatever. And the detective is sitting there one day and he gets a phone call and it said, this is going to freak you out. Okay. He gets a phone call and the phone call says, it's a lady on the phone who says, hey, our good friend, Terry Shields, asked us to get his car out of impound. And we were just wondering, can you help us with that? And what's he actually in for, by the way? And the detective was like, well, how do you know Terry Shields? How are you friends with him? And the lady proceeded to tell him that he was the bus driver for their autistic children. And my heart sinks right now just thinking about it. And the detective's heart just sunk, right? And so he said, what are your daughter's names? And because they were nonverbal autistic and the little one was a runner. So whenever the little girl had a chance, she'd take off running. So the mom had gotten identification cards for both of them. So the detective researched it and pulled up their ID cards. And sure enough, it was the girls in the video. And he was doing horrible things to these girls in these videos. And so they're like, so he rides, so the detective asked the mom, so he's the bus driver for your children? And she's like, yeah. He's like, and we have him, he babysits our children when we go out of town because he's the only one who, understands them. Right. And so literally the detective's heart sunk. Well, they proceed to go over to the family's house. And sure enough, mom identifies the daughters, they do a little photo from the video and says, yeah. And there was now here's the problem with proving that case in a court of law though, is the girls can't talk and tell us that Terry Shields is the one who did these things to him. So he's made videos and, he's done
nothing identifying about him.
Nothing. He's not in the videos, but he had just put vibrators in these little kids. I mean, 3-year-old, just horrible, horrible stuff. There was one photo where there was a hand holding one of the little child's leg, and you could see the watch in the photo. And so I called the detective and said, was he wearing a watch when you arrested him? I need to know. And so he looked, he goes, there's none in evidence, but there's one in his property, which means anybody could have gone to get it at any time. And I said, move it into evidence. And then we compared and it was the watch. So now at least I had the watch, but I still needed the conduct of what happened to the little girl,
Okay. So wait, let me back up. So this came to you because the family lived in Orange County.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we got jurisdiction in Orange County because the kiddie porn charge was in LA County. He was possessing it in LA County. But now we have something bigger. We have a bigger case of 288A, which is lewd act on a child in Orange County. Well, they found another CD that had a child's name. I'll just call her Susie, right? 7YO. And they put that in, and it was a picture of this little 7-year-old girl, and she was posed, she was naked, she had also vibrators and all kinds of crazy stuff, so we knew something horrible. So the police searched this is LA Sheriff, they did a search of Riverside, Orange County, LA County, of any police reports involving a potential victim with this first name, because that's all the CD had was a first name. It was a little more unusual name than Sally,
right?
But with that age around the time. And they found a report in Anaheim of a child who was found at the McDonald's. And in the back parking lot at McDonald's, a woman saw this little girl, 7 years old, just wandering with, after school. And she called the police because this little girl didn't know where she was or anything. And this was terrible investigation by a patrol officer who and I'm not trying to, minimize the crappy police work at this time, but I'm also not passing judgment because I don't know. It could have been a brand new patrol deputy who didn't know better. I don't know. But they literally just brought the girl to her home, and her mom didn't even know she didn't make it to school that day. Okay. But they bring her to mom, and they're like, and the little girl reported to the police that she was kidnapped. And what she reported at that moment was, because her mom would walk her up to like 2 blocks from the school and let her walk 2 blocks by herself. And it was at the end of the 2 blocks was the school. It was a small little community. So I'm not like bagging on mom for letting her 7-year-old walk 2 blocks. Right. But that day she dropped her off. And according to the little girl, a man in a red car pulled up, and he rolled down his window and he said, "Hey, get in the car and I'll take you to Disneyland. Get in the car and I'll take you to Disneyland." And she was like, no, that's okay. He goes, "No, it'll be fun. Come on, get in the car." And then she told the police that he stuck her in the trunk of the car, and they drove her, and that she could hear while she was in the trunk that they went over a freeway, and that he took her to a little house behind a house. And then they watched Seinfeld the whole day, and then he dropped her off. Like, that's all she reported. So she didn't report a sexual assault. So I understand why the police didn't maybe look into it further, but you still got a kidnapping. Okay. But
what a smart little girl to pick up on the fact that she drove over a freeway.
Very smart little girl.
That's
the story gets crazier. So listen to this. So then the cop tells mom, can you take her in the bedroom and the bathroom, make sure nothing happened to her? And the defense attorney at trial was crossing the mom. She's like, "Yeah, sorry, I didn't bring my DNA kit into the bedroom," right? So the mom was, anyway, so that case just sat there. Nothing else happened on that case for years. But then now we have this girl on this video. And so, sorry, I hit the mic. My producer, Pete, always yells at me. I'm sorry, Pete. But anyway, God bless Pete.
God bless
Pete Campbell, more creatives. He's the best. Yes. Anyway, he is. So, what was I saying? Oh, the mom. Okay. So now the police go and interview her, this little girl, and she's now 12.
I was going to say, okay, so 5 years.
5 years go by, and they interview this girl, and they pull her out of school, and they're like, "We want to talk to you." And she's like, "Oh, this is about the kidnapping, right?" And she was real tough as nails, right? So they bring her into CAST, right? Child Abuse Services Team. It's where the social worker will interview in a, very friendly,
relaxed,
child-friendly environment. And they won't question you like you would a suspect. So the social worker goes in there, the one who's trained, and is questioning the little girl, and she sticks by the story. Now, we have a CD with photos, and she did not watch Seinfeld. Okay. She's naked. She's posing. He did some atrocious things to her. There's vibrators and all kinds of stuff involved. Okay. So the little girl this little Susie is in this CAST interview, and she's like, "No, we just watched Seinfeld all day." But she still knew all the details. And they asked her, what'd this guy look like? And she's like, "He was just big and fat and gross. I don't even want to look gross." But she didn't give up any other, sexual assault. So there was this detective who was there watching, and she was amazing. And she said, "Would you mind if I go in?" Because the social worker comes out to the people that are watching this interview and she's not giving anything up. "I don't know what you want me to do." So the detective says, "Is it okay if I go and take a shot at this?" So she goes in there, and she's got her badge and her gun, she's in a suit or whatever, but she goes in and she sits down with little Susie, and she says, "Hey, I understand that this isn't you, she says, "I understand what you're telling, blah, blah, blah." So she actually brings with her a photograph of the little girl, where it's just her face. It's not her naked, but she's kind of got her arm like this because she's posing. And she tells her, like, it's my job to keep kids safe and make sure that nothing bad happens to children. And that's my job. I'm a detective, blah, blah, blah. And then she shows her that picture of her. And immediately the little girl, she goes, that's not me. That's not me. That's not me. That's not me. And in fact, the little girl was so cute. She had a little silver tooth. And so she says, see, that girl's tooth's on the other side. Because, you know, when you take it in the picture, she goes, that girl's tooth's on the other side. It was really cute. But so the detective says to her, I know this isn't you. I understand that this isn't you. She goes, but I'm wondering, do you think you could help me figure out what happened to that little girl so I can make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else again? And she goes, oh yeah, I can help you. She goes, that little girl wasn't smart like me. She goes, and she drank the liquid that he gave her. And then he put her in the trunk. And then he took her back to this little house behind the house. And he made her go like this. And he made her go like this. And she described every single sex act that we had photos of in the third person. So, and it was wild. It was so crazy to hear someone talking about what happened to them, but in the third person. I'd never seen this before. So I contacted a forensic psychologist, Dr. Jody Ward. She's amazing. If anybody in Orange County needs a forensic expert, she's the one. Okay. And I talked to her about it, and she said, yeah, this is actually a psychological mechanism to protect yourself that victims of crime do, where like a rape victim will describe having an outer body experience. That's what happens is you're psychologically, it's so traumatic what's happened to you, you can't handle it. So your body you actually come outside of yourself, and it's as if it's happening to someone else. Right. And she says, I usually that tool that we inherently have as victims of crime, or, you know, anybody who suffers some traumatic event, that will last, but eventually it breaks. Like in the moment it happens, like that fight or flight. In the moment that happens, but she says, I've never seen it last 5 years. I've never seen it. Like there's going to come a day when that comes crashing down. So as a prosecutor prosecuting that case and trying to prove that Terry Shields was the one that did this to these kids, it was tricky because now I have 2 autistic children who are nonverbal, autistic, and can't speak. And then my third victim who's identified, and we know it happened in Orange County, right? So we have jurisdiction. She is still sticking by. Nothing happened. We watched Seinfeld. So I had to prove up that it was her in the pictures and that he was the one that did this to him. And so, I don't even know if I should tell this part of the story, but one of the key things, I had to sit there and I went through every video and every CD in that trunk of horrors to see if there was any corroborating information I could find. And I remember sitting there one day in my office and I was watching this video, and Terry Shields had hired a prostitute to come over. And she shows up and, let me back up a little in the investigation. So I tell my investigator, Tom Conklin, who was amazing, okay? I tell Tom, I don't understand why this little girl's saying she was put in the trunk, right? Because she says, no, he opened his door and I got in the back seat. But then she says I was in the trunk. And I'm thinking, wouldn't somebody have seen a little girl being stuck in a trunk? So I first tell Tom, my investigator at the time, find me every house, every location that Terry Shields lived at. So he does a search and he finds this house off of Western Avenue in Anaheim. And it's maybe 2 miles from this elementary school where this little girl went. And sure enough, if you track the path, when you do Google Maps, the route from the school to this house where he lived at was, you had to cross the freeway. And then we went out to the scene and there was a little house behind a house. It was a long driveway and there was a little house behind a house that he rented. Now it had been since renovated. So the wallpaper was all different because we went in. The wallpaper was different because I was trying to match the wallpaper of the little girl to show that when it happened, so it's not outside the statute of limitations, right? But we knew the day that she was picked up. So we had that, but when was this video taken of her? Was it the day that she was snatched up? You know, there were a lot of legal things that we had to figure out. Right. Jurisdiction. Did it happen in Anaheim? Did it happen at this house? So I have to match up something from the photos to this house. So we have him, in the car. So Tom searches all the cars that he's ever had registered to him and finds a red car. And he owned the red car at the time of this kidnapping, but it had been sold at auction. So Tom finds the red car. Who bought it from this auction? Knock, knock, knock on the people's house. Like, hey, would you mind if I take a look at your car? It was actually used in a kidnapping of a little girl. Nobody wants that. Knock at the door, right?
For sure.
So he goes in and he goes to the car, and sure enough, this is so crazy. It was like, okay, the back seats flipped down into the trunk. And all of a sudden, everything this little girl said made sense, right? We call that corroboration in the criminal land, right? Sure. So now you have this girl saying she was put in the car, but she was in the trunk. So all he did was flip the seat down, stuff her in the trunk, because that way he can drive away and no one's going to see a little girl got in the car and she's in the back seat. As far as anybody sees him driving, nobody's in his car because she was in the trunk. So that, now it's like we're buttoning up these little holes and building corroboration. So one night I'm sitting there in the office, and this is when I realized they don't pay me enough to do this job. Okay. So the girl who comes over, Terry Shields rents this prostitute, and he videotaped the whole thing. So he set up the video towards his bed, but like his big old butt is naked in front of the camera. So I'm watching Terry Shields' big old butt as he's bending over, and the girl says, hey, would you mind taking some pictures of me to send to my boyfriend in prison? So now I got Terry Shields taking pictures of the girl who's on the bed, spread eagle. He's bent over. And I was just like, oh my God. And then he's taking pictures. They proceed to have sex on this videotape, and I'm watching it to the end to see if there's anything I can. And I realized the wallpaper on the back. Here's Terry Shields behind the camera in the same, right, with the wallpaper that was behind the little girl. And the worst part about the whole thing was she only charged him $60 to have sex with him. And I was like, you couldn't pay me $60 to watch that videotape again. And then this is crass.
You didn't charge him with robbery on that either?
What, robbery on the? I should have. Well, the worst part was I told this law clerk, right? Like, oh my God, she only charged him $60 to have sex with him. And the guy was a monster, right? And my law clerk said to me, she should have charged by the pound. Anyway, I know that's terrible and mean, but it was awful. And my friend Jennifer Contini called me that day. She says, hey girl, what are you doing? I'm like, I am watching a 550-pound man take pictures of a prostitute's,
normal Tuesday.
Normal Tuesday. Yeah. And I was like, dude, then they're having sex for $60. I'm like, they don't pay me enough for this job. It was awful. But I had that piece of evidence, and I took a screenshot of it and I showed my jurors. Right? Like, this is corroboration, because she said he was just big and fat and gross, and I don't want to look gross. And it was funny when I argued, not funny, but funny. When I argued the case, I was like 8 months pregnant, so I had a big old belly, right? And I was like, listen, I am the last person who should be talking about having a big old fat belly. But she said the man who kidnapped her had a big old belly. And I said, and then I put that picture of him up, and I said, if that's not corroboration, I don't know what is. But and then the funny part, like just funny things, was Detective Bernie Trapp, when he was on the stand, he was going through all the evidence that was found, and the Tickle Me Elmo doll kept like, it was like giggling during the trial. And yeah, it was crazy. And then, okay, this was probably one of my best moves in trial, I thought.
Ever?
Well.
In this trial?
Yeah, in this trial. Okay. It was pretty good. My husband had a buddy who was an FBI agent who was one of my witnesses. And I didn't know.
How so? Oh, because he was on the task force?
He was on the task force, but I didn't know the guy. I'd never met the guy. It wasn't like there was a conflict. I didn't know him, but my husband knew him. And I said, is he cool? Is he fun? And he goes, yeah, he's a cool guy, right? So, FBI agents call themselves special agents. So I couldn't help myself as soon as because they're very serious in federal court. Like you do not get away with what you get away with in state court. I'd be kicked out. I'd be disbarred like the first day in federal court. You're not allowed to move from the podium. As you can see, I'm moving all the time and driving Pete crazy. But he takes a stand and he goes, I'm like, what's your occupation? He's like, special agent. I don't even remember his name. And I was like, what's so special about you? And if you could have seen his face, it was like,
you're such an asshole.
I'm such an asshole. Huh? It was funny though. I thought I was funny.
Oh, that is funny.
Right? And then I have Bernie Trapp who's on the stand and Elmo's going off, giggling every time he moves the thing. And we couldn't get it to stop. So it was eerie and funny all at the same time. But one of the things, this was the craziest piece of evidence. And this is why when you were talking about, going after the bad guys and everything. One of the things that happened in trial was there was in that blue bag, in that bag with all the weird sex toys. And by the way, there were like 35 different DNA profiles found on those sex toys. It was disgusting. But one of the things was found was this composition notebook. You know, those black and white composition notebooks? It was a notebook. And because I went to go look at all the evidence. I always did that. Even if it was a theft from Costco, I would go look at the evidence because inevitably you find something, right? If you just take that little extra step, go to the scene, see how it plays out. So I went I went to the internet cafe. I went to the little house behind the house. Anywhere there was a location where something might have happened, I went because I wanted to have more information than the other side. And I went to the sheriff's where they house all the evidence. It was gross. Everything was sticky. I wore gloves. I was sicked out the whole time because it was weird, creepy stuff everywhere. But I went through this composition notebook and I went through every page of the notebook, right? Arguably, it's just chicken scratch and, bill stuff. And on like, I'd say the 5th page, there were these notes and they were eerie. We're going to have to put up. So? Yes. Oh my God. It said, I might be getting the street names wrong, but it was like corner of 57th and Orangewood. Mom drops off brother at 8:05, walks little whatever to the corner, has a dog. And I'm like, all these descriptions about these people's patterns. And that was not the location of my victim.
Ugh.
Right? And so the last thing I argued to this jury in that case, I said, if there is any question in your mind that it was Terry Shields that was doing this to these children, right? I want you to look at this. And I had just gotten that notebook into evidence. I didn't say, what did you find here, officer? I just said, and this notebook was in that backpack? Yep. And I moved it into evidence. So I popped it up on the screen and I highlighted those notes in that corner. And I said, mom drops off the kids on the corner of such and such, has a little brother and a dog and walks to school, blonde hair, blue eyes, drops the kid off at 8:07, whatever. I said, those are hunting notes. Terry Shields was hunting children, and then on July 19th, he caught one. And I told him, that's not even the location where our little girl was. That's on the other side of town. He was driving around in that red car, and he was hunting children. So anyway, needless to say, he was prosecuted. He got 156 years to life.
Nice.
It was then that I wanted Judge Fitzgerald on the case. It was Judge McKeno, who was an amazing judge, but Judge Fitzgerald was known for saying this. He said, I know that's a lot of time. Like, you can't do all of that sentence, but try to do as much of it as you can. And so I think I might have thrown that out in my argument to the judge, why you should get every last second of that. And then the disgusting vile vermin died like 2 years later from cancer. And like, to me, I wanted him to rot in prison. I know this is terrible, but I did want a little vigilante justice on that one. But but I was happy to know, like, the detectives who transported him were so disgusted by them that they might have made some quick turns, tossed him around the back of the van a little bit.
That happens.
At least that's what I heard. Yeah. I know that's awful, and I'm not condoning that, but
no.
So yeah, wasn't that a terrible bedtime story?
That's terrible. Mm-hmm. But you have so many.
There's so many of those.
Right.
I know.
There are so many.
They're awful.
You're amazing. Yeah. To do the job you did for as long as you did it and be as successful as you were at that job is truly remarkable. You should be very proud of that.
Oh, thanks, Sally. Well, I am. And you know what? It's not even about me. It's just about like all the people that worked tirelessly.
Sure. Absolutely.
You know, I was just a small little piece in the whole scheme of it, but from the detectives, like Detective Circle, who went that extra step, like he could have left it at that. I got the guy in possession of child porn, but he uncovered something so much more evil by taking that extra step and going and searching that car and then searching that storage unit and then following up on all these things. And my investigator for going that all those little details of the car and the house behind the house, that's all corroboration that the jurors need to hear in order to, to stick it to these people.
Now, have you ever followed up with that little girl?
No, not her. I have other victims that I've followed up with who are doing amazing. I have never followed up with her. I haven't. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just curious.
Maybe I'll do that. It's a good question though. Yeah. I hope she's doing okay.
Yeah.
She was a tough little cookie. And I got to tell you, she was a crazy great artist. Really? She drew me this beautiful picture. I'm going to find that picture. Yeah. She drew me this amazing picture, and I'm hoping that she healed from that, but that psychological tool sticks with her forever.
So did she ever testify?
She testified. And when she testified that I put her on the stand and she said that she was kidnapped. She ID'd him as the guy who kidnapped her. I just had her, because she had previously ID'd him and said, that's the guy. So we had her.
Left it at that.
I left it at that.
Yeah, smart.
And then I played her cast interview where she talked about what happened to that little girl. And then I also showed all the photos that corroborated what she was testifying happened, to that little girl. And then I had the psychologist testify about that this is a psychological mechanism to protect and guard your mental state. And so, it was, that was a crazy case, but he got sentenced to life in prison. I'm sad that he didn't get to do more that time, but yeah.
You know what's so interesting? And people don't understand this. They watch Law and Order, they watch whatever, fill in the blank, law shows, but people don't understand how tricky it is to get evidence in, to keep evidence out, how to really strategically put a case on, and how much actually goes into that. It's unbelievable. And for you to have what everyone would think would be such a slam dunk case, but not even close to a slam dunk case.
Oh, that was not even close to a slam dunk case.
So, I mean, kudos to you for putting all that together. Like you said, I know it's not just you, the team of people, but that's absolutely amazing. And that is a happy ending for sure.
Yeah.
With that. So,
thank you. I appreciate that. I'm proud of that win. I'm proud of that case. I'm proud of that win because that guy, listen, we had so much other little stuff. He probably had hundreds and
of victims, yes.
If not thousands of victims. Right. And so he was a sicko. He was a pervert who was preying. He was the stranger danger that we talk about. And they're few and far between, but when they are out there, they are pure and simple evil. And we need to be the light that is fighting against these evil people. And that's what I'm talking about here on this podcast, is defeating the darkness. Stories that there's some great people out there like yourself. Okay. That I know that Cutie's not the most serious case, but hey, there's a ton of other ones we've worked on together and we're going to work, but that's important. It's important.
Absolutely.
It's important to our client on that one. And we're going to fight just as hard on that one
we are on
these perverts. So, my hat's off to you. Thanks for coming on and being my sidekick.
Thank you.
You're going to come back again, right?
I promise I
over
will.
And over.
We've got a lot to talk about.
We have tons more to talk about.
A lot of good stories to share.
All right. Well, I know, and I can't wait for you to tell some more of your crazy stories because I know you got some too.
I do.
So, wow, thank you so much for coming on, and I can't wait to see you again on here. And we'll let you know how the Cutie trial goes.
Yes.
And so, until the next time, until we meet again, I just want to send you away with this. I know that was a terrible bedtime story, but there was light within that. We got Terry Shields. He got locked away for prison, even in prison. 156 years. Stuck it to that guy, even though he only did a few before he died from cancer. But I hope it was painful. Anyway, if you, right? Is this, I know these are terrible, but if you can't find the light in the midst of the darkest places, this is where I want to encourage you to be the light. So until next time, we'll see you. And don't forget to follow, subscribe. We are on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. Thanks for listening. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.